Hi, I'm Scott Libert. I'm a software manager at Ocean, and I love software. I love creating and doing for about 22 years, and I started doing that after I realized I wasn't going to get to be an astronaut, so I figured this was probably the next best thing. I'm also a software mentor at First Robotics. I thank James for getting me roped into this. And last year was my first year here, and at First Robotics, but I had a great time. So we're looking for some software innovators, and I want you to help give a robot a brain, or as Michael would say, consciousness. There's an opportunity here to change the world. So, what is software? Well, software is everywhere. It's in computers, it's in printers, it's in cell phones, iPods, it's in calculators, cars, microwaves, stereos, TV, shuttles, airplanes, and even in toothbrushes. Robots use software. Robots go where we can't. So robots will go underwater. They'll go up on the moon, can launch them into space in rockets, can also launch them into satellites. Now robots also can do what we don't want to, like that. Here's a robot that on the middle there is actually designed to watch your pet. On the bottom is a Roomba robot, which is designed to automatically vacuum your carpet. And my personal favorite, I used to live in the Northwest where we get big fall leaves in the gutters. This is a gutter cleaning robot. I would love to have one of those if I lived back there. All right, this is a Thunder Chicken, as you saw outside. He's our robot from last year. And this is what drives the robot. This is that brain, if you will. It's called a CPU. I can tell you what that is. All the initials mean later, but think of it as a CPU. And think of it as a robot with a CPU, but without any software. It's kind of like a baby. It just doesn't know what to do. It's got arms and legs and everything else, but it needs some training to figure out, okay, if I see something, what do I do? So that's what software is about. What does a software team do? Well, it starts with step one, which is design. And design, what we normally do is get in front of a whiteboard. If you know me, you know I love whiteboards. I love to draw, I'm very visual. And so we throw up our ideas on the board and try to figure out what makes sense. Wild ideas are totally welcome on the software team. Here's a couple of guys from last year, Patrick on the software team on the left and Edwin on the right, trying to design the steering system for the robot. So the question is, do we want to do this? Well, do you like to design stuff? Okay, so that's the first question to think about. The next step is we write what we call code. That's step two. If you look at the robot, down there on the bottom, that's where the CPU is. That's where we put our software. So that's the robot control software, and we write it using a language called C++. That's some of the language there. It may look like gibberish to you, but if you're interested in C++ or interested in software, we'll teach you that part, so don't worry. Second of all, we also need to create something called a dashboard, which allows us to see what's going on inside the robot. Gives us feedback as to what all the different dials and motors and everything are doing. We developed this in software we call LabVIEW. It's a little bit more of a graphical environment. So we write code in these two different environments, C++ and LabVIEw. I want to take a moment to talk about the stereotypical software person. There's a stereotype that says that software people were born that way. There's also a stereotype that says that they don't have any suntan, they drink soda all the time, and have carpal tunnel syndrome because they type all the time. I'm here to tell you that these stereotypes are not always true. So what might be some things that you care about that might mean you might like to do software? Well, first of all, do you like to invent things? That's an important question. Oops. Bugs in the software, what can you say? Do you like to figure out how stuff works? That's a really important attribute of somebody who works in a software team. Do you like to solve problems? We got lots of problems. There are lots of problems in the world to solve. There's also lots of problems we create for ourselves sometimes. We have to solve them. Do you like to sit in front of a computer? If you're the kind of person who just wants to work with a hammer or a torch, this is probably not what you want to be doing. But if you love to sit in front of the computer, I think you might find a home there. And P.S., there is some math required. Now, the next step is we have to make sure it works. And we have to make sure it works right. And we have to make sure it works well. and we have to make sure it works fast. And if you're on the team, you're going to hear me say that over and over and over again. Because it's not just about getting a light to blink or a motor to run. We have to make sure it does that all the time. So what do? We test. Test happens all the time in the world, and you're very glad it does, because if people didn't test for car crashes, you might be in a lot more trouble than you are right now. Here's the test group working on the robot, trying to figure out why it wasn't working. That's John on the right there, and Mr. Mann thinking of some ideas about what might be wrong. If you are interested in test, a real important question is, do you like to break things? Because what we look for in a software test person is somebody who actually can figure out what might break, design tests, and run those tests to find out. So here's what you do as a group. Basically, you do the test, you see if it works, and if it does work, this is what we call pseudocode. It's kind of like software. You celebrate, and then you try to find other ways to break it. And if it doesn't work, then if it almost works, you go back and do some more code. And if it doesn't work because it'll never work, then you go back and design it some more. So there are some challenges with being on the software team. It is tough stuff. Sometimes you go home with a headache because there's a lot of problems that still need to be solved. You guys may have heard a famous person say that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It is a lot of work. So if you're looking to come here and just hang out and be lazy, this is not the team for you. So it is tough, but passion is the fuel. So when it's tough, it helps to really care about what you're doing, because it gives you the energy you need, and not to mention we get fuel from hamburgers too every day. We have a couple other challenges. One is called spaghetti. Spaghetti is a big tangled mess. We get that in software sometimes. We also get that in the control system. You can see this one's not quite spaghetti, but it's on the way if we're not careful. You know, you get into these situations where you have multiple people working on it, and it's spaghetti, and it's really hard to figure out what's going on. In fact, there's a mathematical equation that says, as you square the amount of spaghetti, that's the amount of confusion you get. To which Thomas Edison would have replied, I haven't failed, I found 10,000 ways that don't work. So, when pursuing a passion or following a dream, pain is part of the process. Sometimes there's rejection, because when you innovate, you got to be prepared for everyone telling you you're nuts. Changing the world is not always easy. Are you up to the challenge? Now, the cool thing is you get to work with other teams as well. You get to work with talented electrical engineers. You get to work with talented builders. You get to work with talented chefs and many others. All right, it's our busy schedule. This is what we got to talk about, because if you're going to be on the team, you got to understand we're going to get really busy here. We're going to have several training sessions up until the end of the year. It's going to be like training camp in football. At the end of that time, we're going to decide who really wants to be on the team, who can sign up for crunch time. Crunch time is January and February, 6 solid weeks where you should expect to be here Saturday and Sunday, as well as days during the week. And we're going to work really hard, and when it's done, we're going to come up with an awesome robot. Competition happens in March. So, if you have any questions, see me as we're eating lunch. I'd love to have you on the team. Thanks.